Hey everyone, welcome back to another Forge College Explainer. So, coming off our last session on developer implications and next steps, today we're diving into something that, let's be honest, probably gives every Web3 developer occasional night sweats. We're talking about the hidden accounting rules of blockchains. You know, those exact primitives that actually dictate your deployment rhythm and your architectural choices. It's time to pull back the curtain on gas versus compute units.
Now, I want you to really think about this for a second. Are you micromanaging your transactions, or are you just handing them a budget? This question basically strikes right at the heart of the EVM to SVM transition. It highlights this massive philosophical shift in how these two totally different blockchain architectures charge for resources. It's kind of like, imagine the difference between a boss who charges you for every single paperclip you use versus a boss who just hands you a corporate card and says, hey, here's your budget for the week, go wild, just don't go over it. Okay, so here's our blueprint for today's explainer. We're going to start with the primitives of cost, compare itemized receipts versus metered buckets, and see how resource accounting actually differs. Then we'll look at some real-world transaction scenarios, and finally wrap up with developer mental models and our summary and next steps. Let's get right into it. All right, part 1, the primitives of cost. Let's take a look at the basic bookkeeping instruments that convert your code's execution into a hard, measurable cost. First up, we've got EVM gas, which we can think of as the itemized receipt. In an Ethereum-style model, gas acts like this incredibly strict micromanager. It meticulously tracks and charges you for every single opcode, every byte of memory you touch, and every storage write you execute. I mean, it is an intricate, granular metering system. Every single time your smart contract takes a breath, the EVM records it and charges you a very specific fee for that exact breath. Conversely, jumping over to a Solana-style model, we have compute units, or the metered bucket. These act way more like an arcade token budget. You basically hand your transaction over with this bucket of compute units, and the transaction just consumes from the bucket until the work is completely done. But if that bucket abruptly runs dry before the game is over, well, game over, you gotta insert more coins. It's a runtime level cap rather than this microscopic per-operation toll booth. Moving right along to part 2, itemized receipt versus metered bucket. Let's really lean into these two distinct accounting philosophies. So think of EVM gas as that absurdly long CVS-style pharmacy receipt. You know, the one where every single item, the gum, the shampoo, the paper bags, is tracked, itemized, and priced perfectly. You can trace exactly where every penny went. Compute units, on the other hand, well, they're like a prepaid debit card you hand over for a road trip. You don't really care if the money went to tolls or snacks, right? You just care about that broad end-to-end budget holding up until you actually reach your destination. All right, part 3, how resource accounting differs. Let's break down the mechanical differences here across 3 core dimensions: granularity, timing of enforcement, and storage. Mechanically speaking, EVM checks granularity at the opcode level, while SVM uses a much coarser transaction-level check. But hey, look at the timing of enforcement here, because this is wild. EVM actually decrements gas mid-call, operation by operation. SVM, though, it checks against a runtime budget, which means you're often negotiating your budget at submission time rather than, discovering you're totally out of gas halfway through a critical function. That drastically changes when and how your program might halt. Now, the really crucial point here is how these systems treat your data's long-term residence on the network. EVM bakes the heavy burden of network storage directly into the execution price. I mean, writing to state is deliberately painfully expensive in gas. SVM, on the other hand, sensibly handles persistent state effects through a totally separate economic channel, essentially like rent. The big implication for us? In EVM, you absolutely have to optimize to avoid storage writes immediately. But in SVM, you optimize for execution efficiency first. Okay, part 4, real-world transaction scenarios. Theory is great and all, but let's actually put it into practice and see how this changes the code we write every single day. Let's start with scenario A, your standard token transfer. Even for something this simple, EVM developers have to watch storage writes like hawks, because updating that final balance is absolutely going to be the most expensive line item on the receipt. SVM developers, meanwhile, they primarily just need to ensure the standard budget default fits the execution, since that minor rent fee is handled completely separately. Now, scenario B gets a bit trickier: loop iterations. When you're processing a dynamic list with state changes, gas is actually quite predictable. Because you've got that itemized receipt, you can predict the exact marginal cost of adding one more iteration. But with compute units, since it's a metered bucket, you really require runtime profiling. You have to empirically measure the aggregate consumption to make sure you don't hit a sudden wall, drain the bucket entirely, and accidentally revert your whole batch. To put this into a concrete perspective for you, a single EVM storage write inside a loop might cost you 20,000 gas. 20,000. Think about that. If you're doing, say, 100 iterations, that number instantly dominates your entire itemized receipt. It makes the storage bottleneck aggressively, undeniably obvious.
And then we have scenario C, heavy on memory computation, stuff like cryptography or sorting. If you're running heavy CPU cycles, EVM is going to nickel and dime you incredibly quickly. Literally every arithmetic step costs you. SVM's metered bucket handles this bulk computation much, much better, since it summarizes the work. But, quick caveat here, if you find your bucket completely draining even in SVM, that's your flashing warning sign to offload the heavy math off-chain and just submit a succinct proof instead. Part 5. Developer mental models. So, armed with these accounting realities, how do you actually decide what to optimize first?
This is where you really have to pick your mindset. If you've got the itemized mindset of the EVM, you have per-op visibility. You're going to act like a detective, hunting down specific, expensive opcodes and rewriting algorithms just to avoid them. We're talking pure micro-optimization. But with the metered mindset of the SVM, your goal shifts entirely. You aren't chasing tiny per-op gains anymore. You're trying to shrink the total aggregate work, refactoring the whole shebang, or precomputing off-chain to make sure everything actually fits in the bucket.
I highly recommend running your daily coding choices through this quick optimization checklist. Seriously, it will massively lower your cognitive load. Just ask yourself, can I see per op cost? If yes, prioritize those opcode hotspots. Is execution constrained by a single budget? If yes, measure end-to-end compute and split the work if you need to. And lastly, are storage costs separate? If yes, treat your persistent state writes as an entirely separate optimization target. Simple as that.
All right, part 6, summary and next steps. Let's go ahead and wrap up our time here in the blockchain accounting department, bringing it all together.
If you only take away 3 things today, make it these golden principles. Number 1, treat gas as an itemized receipt to really drive your micro-optimizations. Number 2, treat compute units as a runtime budget for broad end-to-end control. And number 3, whenever you leave the EVM, always, and I mean always, mentally separate your execution costs from your persistent storage rent. They are 2 totally different beasts.
So, that leaves us with one final, absolutely critical question to ponder. How do we translate these abstract accounting models into hard, measurable efficiency metrics? Well, that is exactly what we're going to answer in our next explainer, efficiency and cost implications. Until then, I'd highly encourage you to grab a real transaction trace to practice identifying these costs yourself. And hey, be sure to visit forge.college to explore more fantastic Web3 explainers from us here at Forge College. Keep building, and I will see you in the next one.